All right, friends, please make your way to your seats. We want to make sure we can get started and respect everybody's time. Woo! All right, can we cut the music in the back? Awesome, thank you. All right, folks, thank you so much for coming to the Western Slope People's Forum, hosted by Western Colorado Alliance. Your local alliance for community action since 1980. I'm Emily Hornback, the Executive Director of Western Colorado Alliance.
And I'm Arlo Miller. I'm a member of the board and chair of the local Just Housing team.
Before we go any further, I want to make sure Antonio is here. We're going to invite him up to the stage to explain how we are going to do Spanish language interpretation at this event. All right, Antonio Rodriguez.
Thank you, Emily. Hi, everybody. My name is Antonio Rodriguez, and today we're going to have simultaneous interpretation from English into Spanish. Western Colorado Alliance has been practicing language inclusion, which perfect acknowledgement because it shows that more and more the Hispanics are, and the demographics is more and more. So thank you, Western Colorado Alliance. I'm going to share some guidelines real quick. We're going to have everything being in real time interpreted into Spanish. And when it comes to have the anyone in the public that wants to ask questions, we're going to do the opposite from Spanish into English. First of all, we would like to recommend or give a little advice to go a little slower. Spanish takes up to 20% more words. So this is a safe space and no one is going to rush anyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Antonio. All right, at today's event, we are going to be joined by 5 candidates running for state constitutional office of Governor, Attorney General, and Secretary of State. We're going to have them up here on stage in just a moment, but before we go for any further, we just wanted to explain a bit more about today's event. For those of you who are not familiar with Western Colorado Alliance, though it sounds like we have a crowd that is, just wanted to say that we are a local grassroots organization that has been around for 46 years, born and built here in Western Colorado, and we are here to build healthy, just, and resilient communities across Western Colorado. And even though we were born in 1980 in Montrose and have seen a lot happen over those years, we made a choice in 2022 to go see how things had changed after the COVID pandemic. And in the past 5 years, we've spoken to thousands of Western Coloradans about what's going on in their lives. We've gone from Nucla, we've gone to Rifle, we've gone to Clifton, and all places in between. And some of those folks are here to share their stories and ask a question about their lived experience to these candidates today.
We've worked with many of these people to solve community problems together, ranging from creating affordable housing funds to helping provide free school meals to our kids, protecting public lands, expanding local market access for farmers, and more. But now many of these successes are at risk due to a historic state budget crisis. That crisis is complex without one single cause, but it's being made worse by historic federal budget and funding cuts that impact us here in Western Colorado. The Bell Policy Center shows that rural Colorado will be hit the hardest by these cuts to Medicaid, SNAP, and other critical programs that many in our communities rely on. So we're here together today to share these stories with candidates hoping to represent us and to hear how they will govern to address the needs of the entire state.
All right, and we know we have people from all over Western Colorado in the room today. So folks from Mesa County, let's hear a shout. We're here in your hometown. Thank you for coming. We're happy to have you. How about Montrose? We know you came in a bus. And we have folks from Garfield County. And how about folks from places even further away? Woo! All right, thank you all again for making the trip and being here with us on this Saturday. Before we get started, one last thing. We just wanted to explain why we have a couple empty rows up here in the front. As we all know, we're living through a very intense and scary time of immigration and ICE enforcement in our country. And that means that folks from our communities are not always comfortable coming and participating in public life. The Sentinel reported that in the last year, over 240 folks from Mesa County alone have been detained in our own community. Immigrants are and have always, yes, boo, boo to that. Immigrants are and have always been a critical part of Western Colorado. They are our friends, they are our neighbors, they're members of our family. And some of those folks are here to ask questions today, but for folks who didn't feel like they could be here in person, we have them here with us in spirit. All right, and with that, we'll invite our candidates who are here to the stage.
All right, please welcome Senator Jesse Danielson, candidate for Secretary of State. Please welcome Mr. Michael Doherty, candidate for Attorney General. And please welcome Mr. David Seligman, candidate for Attorney General.
And we will have Attorney General Bill Weiser running for governor here a little bit later. He's running late from a trip from Durango.
And we will also have Amanda Gonzalez, candidate for Secretary of State, joining us later. Thank you to the candidates for making the long trip over here. It's a trip we're familiar with. Western Colorado Alliance has often sent people to go testify at the state capitol through hairy weather, so we're glad the weather was hopefully tolerable. We're glad you're here. We'd like to establish some ground rules for today's forum, both for the candidates and for our audience. We'll start with the candidates. We're hoping to keep a nice civil debate. I'm not too worried about that. You guys are all very friendly. But we're here to respond to the stories and lived experiences of residents in the Western Slope. And we're hoping to hear, not just campaign talking points, but responses to the people we bring up. We also will be setting time limits for these questions just to keep things moving. We've got a lovely little timer here in the center, and Mackenzie is helping us out. Time, thank you, Mackenzie. Yeah. But if possible, we will be trying to ask follow-up questions and just have a good conversation. As for our audience, we encourage audience participation. Please clap, cheer, or raise your paddles to show support for our storytellers and for candidate answers. However, now that we've finished with the other portion of our introduction, we ask that you refrain from booing, yelling, or otherwise distracting from stories or responses from our candidates. Please make sure your cell phones and devices are muted at this time. We reserve the right to publicly shame anyone whose device goes off. Anyone who disturbs the program in an extreme way will be asked to leave by our floor team. If you need assistance, please signal to one of our floor team and we'll come help.
Those are the folks in the lovely Western Colorado Alliance t-shirts.
All right, so we would like now for the candidates to introduce themselves, why they're running for office, and how, if you're elected, you will govern to represent Western Colorado. We'll begin with Senator Danielson. You have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me here? Yes. Well, hello, Western Slope folks. It is so nice to be here with you. My name is Jesse Danielson, and I'm running for Colorado Secretary of State. I know that the issues that are top of mind for you right now are the same as mine. Our democracy is under attack, and we need someone in the Secretary of State's office with the experience and the wherewithal to stand up and fight back and protect all of your right to vote. And that is why I'm running for Secretary of State. Just for the folks who I don't know as well, and thank you again for welcoming me back to Grand Junction. It has been a lovely visit and one of my favorite parts of the entire state. It's great to be on the West Slope. I actually grew up on a farm up in Weld County, and so I'm a 4th generation of my family to live in rural Colorado. So there again, we need someone in this office who has an understanding and will respond in a genuine way to the voters across the state, whether they're urban, suburban, or rural Coloradans. Yes, thank you. I started off on election reform and election law back in 2013. I was the state director for an organization called America Votes. And that was the year where we put together the coalition that passed the bill that established vote centers, vote by mail, and same-day registration all across Colorado in that big bill. And as you all know, that's held up as the gold standard for election law across the country. When I got elected to the State House in 2014, I continued to focus on election rights and expanding access to the ballot and strengthening our democracy. I crafted and passed the bill that established automatic voter registration and other measures like ballot access for voters with disabilities. Continued to work with the county clerks across the state on their annual updates, always looking towards increased participation and breaking down barriers to vote. I think right now we also want someone in these statewide offices with a proven track record of standing up and fighting for progressive values. I'm the only one in this race with that kind of a record. I passed the Equal Pay for Equal Work Act, the Farm Worker Bill of Rights, the Marriage Equality Act, the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Relatives Office, and many, many more. And because we need someone in this office with the strength to stand up to Donald Trump, in order to get most of those things passed, whether it was the Child Sex Abuse Accountability Act or regulating assisted living facilities against abuse and neglect, I had to fight against the leadership of our own party to get these things done. You better believe I'm well equipped to stand up to Donald Trump. I have the support of elected officials like Joe Neguse, Jason Crow, Brittany Pedersen, Elizabeth Velasco, Megan Lukens, and county clerks all across the state, and the Southern Ute Indian Tribe, who has never endorsed a candidate before.
Thank you,
I
Senator
thank you
Danielson.
for your time today, folks. Again, thanks for having me.
Thank you very much, Senator Danielson. Next, let's hear from Michael Doherty.
Good afternoon, Western Slope. How we doing? My name is Michael Doherty, and I'm running for Attorney General, but it is great to be back on the Western Slope. As I was coming in, people kept saying, thank you for being here. And as I told them, I would not miss this. If you're going to be the people's lawyer, it means showing up. Do you agree with me? And the Western Slope is a beautiful and important part of our state. And throughout my career as a prosecutor and a leader, I've had the privilege to be here on many occasions, to help on cold case homicides, to work on sentencing reform. And I'm going to continue serving the people of Western Slope because it's an important part of Colorado. And that's why I'm going to build off the success of Phil Weiser in traveling the entire state as Attorney General, but also doing this. I'm going to have more staff for the AG's office given the privilege to live and work on the Western Slope. Because when it comes to fighting private equity firms and blocking them from their buy and dry schemes and trying to buy up your water, we should have AG staff living and working in this community. When it comes to helping local district attorney and sheriff and police in public safety, like prosecuting Tina Peters, we should have people living and working in this community. When it comes to representing the great university, Colorado Mesa University, the AG staff should be living and working in this community, and I promise you I'm going to make that happen as your next Attorney General. I'm running for Attorney General because we are living through the greatest threat to our democracy in my entire lifetime, and the fight is on, and it's a fight I'm ready for starting day one as Attorney General. I'm the District Attorney for Boulder County. I was born in Brooklyn, New York. My grandparents, all four of them, came over from Ireland and settled in Brooklyn, New York for the freedoms and opportunities our country offered to them then. I am humbled and honored, not that many years later, to be an elected district attorney running for Attorney General. That's the embodiment of the American dream and a path denied to so many now. And as Attorney General, I'll always fight for marginalized and vulnerable communities. After going to community college and putting myself through school and going on to law school, I went back to New York City. I worked at the Manhattan DA's office as a prosecutor and a leader for 13 years. Ultimately, I was in charge of 1,300 people in the DA's office. I left there to come to Colorado to work for the Attorney General's office. I was a prosecutor and became the Deputy Attorney General, so I know the importance and impact of that office. And for the last 8 years, I've had the privilege of leading the District Attorney's Office for Boulder County on criminal justice reform, but also through times of crisis. The King Soopers mass murder case, I handled that case myself, and I tried that case, and he was held fully accountable. The Pearl Street firebombing, that kind of work is key to me. And it's the kind of passion I'm going to bring to standing up and fighting for immigrants in our communities as well. And will you join me in calling for a ban on private prisons in the state of Colorado?
Thank you, Mr. Dougherty. And next, let's hear from Mr. David Seligman.
Thanks so much. It's really wonderful to be here, back here on the Western Slope. I'm so grateful for my friend Michael Doherty showing me how to use the mic. I'm David Seligman. I'm a workers' rights, civil rights, and consumer protection lawyer. Grew up here in Colorado, the grandson of working class immigrants who scraped and clawed for my opportunity. I had the opportunity to go to Harvard Law School and to clerk for federal judges. But I saw early on the nightmare lurking behind this American dream, right? A system where the wealthy and powerful play by a completely different set of rules than the rest of us. The system that brought us to this moment of crisis. So I moved back home to Colorado. I dedicated every single day of my legal career to standing up in court for working families. I built my organization Towards Justice into a powerhouse nationally in the fight for economic justice and civil rights. Used the law boldly and courageously and in ways no one had ever tried before for thousands of Amazon delivery drivers across Colorado, forced to skip breaks and urinate in bottles, for sheep herders across the Western Slope, for ski resort workers taking on ski resort monopolies, for meat packers in Greeley with disfigured hands because of JBS's brutal line speeds, for communities spied upon by AI, for renters buried in junk fees to corporate landlords. We just won in the United States Supreme Court a case I've been fighting for more than a decade on behalf of tens of thousands of immigrants detained at the Immigration Detention Center in Aurora, Colorado, taking on the Geo Group, the private prison company that owns that facility. I've recovered nearly $100 million stolen from working people, using the law boldly and courageously to do it. We've sued the Trump administration and won, and we've sued the Polis administration and won. We just stopped the governor from turning over Coloradans' personal information to ICE. Because whether it's granting clemency to Tina Peters or cozying up to ICE, complicity is not an option, Governor. Not now, not ever. For me, this fight has never just been about the red team versus the blue team. It's always been about the many versus the money, right? That's exactly how I'm going to fight as your next Attorney General, using law boldly and courageously, not just to take on Donald Trump, but to take on the cruelty and corruption that surrounds him. And you know this better than anybody else right here on the Western Slope. We need to take on the conditions that gave rise to him, going after the private equity firms, buying up our water, buying up our public lands, right, that are being sold for the profits of billionaires, right? Buying up our mobile home parks to jack up our rents and to extract millions and millions and millions from us. We got to take all of that on, right? Boldly and courageously to do it, to fight for a better Colorado for everybody, for a better Colorado, for something better than what we had before. We can fight for a better and brighter future. It will require using the law boldly and courageously to do it. And that's exactly what I'll do as your next Attorney General. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seligman. Well, now that we know our candidates a little bit, it's time to turn to specifics. One of the things that has kept me engaging with Western Colorado Alliance as a volunteer is our ability to work on specific policy for people to come to our alliance with issues and find access to powerful decision makers to work on those issues. So to begin with, a question on water from member Barbara Vasquez from Jackson County.
I'm live. I don't have to turn it on. That's great. Good afternoon. I'm Barbara Vasquez. I'm a member of the WCA board and have worked on their oil and gas team for years. I've made the long trek from Jackson County to attend this event and hear from you all. Jackson County, called North Park, is the headwaters of the North Platte. It is east of the Continental Divide, so you might wonder, why am I here? Because that's technically not the West Slope, but we share common landscapes and economies. And our population of less than 1,400 human beings feels very close to WCA. I came to share my story as a rural Coloradan and to ask about the existential topic that's on the mind of everyone in our state this year, and that's water. Nothing more critical to our survival. As you know, we have had record-breaking temperatures on top of a snow drought this winter, resulting in the lowest levels of snowpack in our state's recorded history. Without those frozen reservoirs in our mountains, predictions for all the rivers in our state are really, really grim. And the 7 states that rely on the Colorado River for water are deadlocked on how to manage the system. In western and rural Colorado, drought means much more than when can you water your lawn. It is a threat to the entirety of our communities and our economic systems. Agriculture is one of the largest economic drivers in western Colorado, and I'm hearing from my ranching neighbors that they might lose irrigation water early this season, and those with junior water rights may not get any. Outdoor recreation and river rafting are also another critical driver for our region's economies, as I'm sure you all know. But the outfitters and fly fishermen fear another year when the Yampa and other rivers will be so low that they'll be closed to all recreation. Kind of like the terrible ski season we had as well in terms of impact to economy. And the 25 years of prolonged drought threaten the very ecosystems upon which we all depend, drying up streams and rivers, threatening cold water fisheries, impacting food and habitat for populations of iconic bird species and the big game that is the bedrock of our Colorado hunting communities. So I think we can all agree that we are at a historic moment in our history when those old agreements and structures for managing our water no longer work, and yet we are bound by first in time, first in right. So what creative solutions do we have? If you're elected to office, how will you work to address this crisis and preserve our water resources for generations to come?
And that is for our Attorney General candidates. Attorney General candidates.
Michael and I are used to this kind of thing, so we worked it out. But you said Barbara was your name? Really appreciate the question. You're absolutely right. You're at an existential. I got to be honest. I'm still learning about water issues, right? And I look forward to learning alongside all of you. But here's what I do know.
Talk to me.
Yeah, I'm eager to. But here's what I do know about how the law works so often and how it works on these issues too. It's what I learned. What someone shared with me the last time I was out on the Western Slope. They said, remember, in Colorado, water always flows uphill to money, right? Always. Like, that's the system that we have to take on. And there's going to be easy fights and there's going to be hard fights, right? There's going to be easy questions like, we shouldn't have big tech companies right now building out data centers on the Front Range to guzzle a million gallons of water a day, right? In order to build the robots that are going to spy on us in order to jack up our prices and drive down our wages. Totally absurd, right? We have to continue to fight. We absolutely have to continue to fight to make sure that we're not, losing water to, other states in the Colorado River Compact, so they can send more alfalfa to China or something like that, right? Those are the easy things, right? There's also going to be hard questions right here in Colorado, or we're going to have to find ways to tighten our belts, right? We're up against some really, really dire threats. And I also know that, we got to make sure, especially here on the Western Slope, where these issues, as you said, this isn't just about, whether we can water our lawns, it's about our way of life, right? We need to make sure that those interests are meaningfully protected. Transparently, Michael Doherty on the campaign has been talking a lot about making sure that there are attorneys from the Attorney General's office all across Colorado, and I love the idea, and I would adopt it as well as Attorney General. I think it's really important that if we're going to be talking about water, that we've got attorneys on the Western Slope, right, that are protecting the interests of people here in Colorado, in the San Luis Valley, right, that can really engage with their communities. The reason I know that it's such a good idea is I once mentioned it in front of a crowd in Denver, and someone says, won't those bias people in favor of those communities, right? What about all the attorneys that we right now have in Denver? Are they biased in favor of Denver, right? It's really important that we have an office that understands, that reflects communities across the state and understands the plight of communities across the state, especially as we take on really hard, really meaningful existential questions. And
Barbara, thanks for that question. As the next Attorney General, water is a top priority for me. It has to be. For the reason you asked it is the first question. And whenever I'm outside the Denver metro area, that is the question I get first and foremost, which is water. And I knew it would be because water is a crisis point here in Colorado. And as the head of the criminal section for the Attorney General's office, as the Deputy Attorney General, I was there when the Attorney General's office was arguing in front of the U.S. Supreme Court in a case against Nebraska years ago. So from before I started the campaign, I pulled together a group of water experts, activists, and attorneys, saying, let's get together on a policy around water. Because we have a number of things the Attorney General's office has to be ready to do on day one. The first is the Colorado River Compact. So the compact ends this year. And with negotiations continuing to break down, it's going to be the Attorney General's responsibility to stand up against the federal government when they try to impose their solution upon Colorado. And with Donald Trump in office, we can't let that happen. It's also about recognizing that the River Compact is an agreement not just for Colorado, but for the 40 million people, the tribal nations, the 7 states, and Mexico that rely upon that water. And as your Attorney General, I will fight to protect the water for our ranchers, farmers, and all of us throughout this great state. But I will also do so with a mind towards the scarcity of water that we face right now. So I will promise you that I'll fight in court for water, and I'll push the legislature to be more thoughtful about what we're doing with Colorado's water. But it's also about making sure private equity firms can't buy up the limited water supplies we have. And I promise you to stop that. And Barbara, I'm going to hold corporate polluters fully responsible when they contaminate our waterways. And my friend David, and we're actually friends at this point, believe it or not. People say that on the news. Sometimes we actually mean it when we say it. My friend David talked about data centers, and he's absolutely right. I look at the Suncor plant that's been contaminating communities of color and low-income communities right by the highway on the way to DIA. They paid a $2 million fine, and the year they made $2 billion, and that is unacceptable to me as the next Attorney General. And just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for that community, a data center gets dropped in there. And to me, the amount of water that data center is going to use and the pollutants they're going to give off is something as the next Attorney General I'm going to stand strong against. I will say I have hope because of the younger generation. I have twins who are seniors in high school, and the other night, my son and daughter at the kitchen table working on their homework, and I'm working on the campaign, and my son says they were bickering or debating about something, and my son says, I'll just look it up on ChatGPT. And my daughter said, why don't you just take a bucket of water and throw it out the window while you're at it? For our younger generation, we need an Attorney General who's going to stand and fight for our environment and for our water. I promise you I'll do that. Thank you.
All right, Barbara, if you have we have a little bit of time for another question on this subject. Do you have a follow-up?
I'm really pleased that both of you addressed inside Colorado issues. I know the AG's office is well armed for compact lawsuits, the Platte, the Arkansas, the Rio Grande, the Colorado. What's important to me right now is hearing how creative you think you can be to help us inside Colorado make good decisions. There's no uber alles for a decision about whether using 30 million gallons to frack a well versus however much data centers are using versus what we need for ag. How are you going to attack that thorny question, right?
Thank you for the additional question. So it's projects like the Windy Gap project that they have in Fraser and Granby that I visited a few months ago as part of my effort to learn more about what we're going to do to prioritize water. They've changed the river flow, so they still maintain their commitment to other communities while making more use of their water. So that's number one, lifting up projects like that and helping them with innovative efforts. Being more efficient with how we use water. We have in Colorado the understanding that it's use it or lose it for people with water rights. Making sure that they recognize what the law actually allows them to do while still maintaining their water rights is absolutely key. So bringing more technology to bear to the problem, but also making sure the limited waterways we have are being put to best possible use. There are innovative projects, not just the Windy Gap project, but also down in the San Luis Valley that are underway. The San Luis Valley, in a lot of ways, is a model for what we could do to make better use of our water more efficiently throughout the entire state. We're doing that kind of work here on the Western Slope as well. And I think it's about being more focused on environmental efforts around how we make the best use of the limited and dwindling water supply we have right now. So thank you for the follow-up question.
Thank you.
I think that like fundamentally, we also have to revisit some of the old doctrines on the books that maybe aren't serving us right now. So doctrines that allow for use in excess of water rights and years of excess flow, right? Some of these things just don't make sense in light of like the current scarcity that we're dealing with right now. We also have to address to see that all these issues are connected. This is also a monopoly problem, right? And we need to make sure that we're going after big ag in ways that it may be guzzling water that doesn't serve the interests of our broader community. It doesn't and actually undermines small ranchers and small farmers. Another thing that I often talk about in the campaign is we've got doctrines in Colorado that allow billionaires to limit access to our rivers. This is often a question of public lands, but I think it comes up here too, right? It's something the Attorney General on day one can do something about. Say, you know what, our rivers and streams belong to the people of Colorado for all of us. I think we need all the tools in the toolbox to really address, as you say, this existential challenge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shanna Shepherd, come on up. All right, our next question is asked by Shanna Shepherd from the Community Impact Council of Mesa County, and this is for Senator Jesse Danielson running for Secretary of State. So, Shanna, take it away.
Thank you. My name is Shanna Shepherd, and I work with and serve on boards of several nonprofits in Mesa County, including being the current vice chair of the Community Impact Council, an organization whose mission is to collaborate with, educate, and support nonprofits across Mesa County. As a region with big needs that has always had to fight for fair resources and funding, nonprofits play a critical role in our community here in Grand Junction and across the Western Slope. There are over 1,000 registered nonprofits in Mesa County alone. And in addition to delivering critical services to our community, we are important to our regional economy. According to a 2023 study conducted by Colorado Mesa University, nonprofits employ 3,000 people in Mesa County with a contribution to the regional GDP of $224 million. That equates to 4.7% of Mesa County wages. However you measure it, we are an important part of the Western Slope. And yet, since 2025, nonprofits are facing a time of incredible uncertainty. Millions of dollars have been cut or recalled from federal grant programs, throwing budgets into chaos, resulting in the cutting of programs and staff, and threatening the existence of many of us in the nonprofit sector. This impacts everything from food access and security, housing assistance, child services, river restoration efforts, public land stewardship, arts and culture, and much more. In addition to these funding cuts, there have been executive orders and congressional attempts to change the federal tax code and weaponize the IRS to investigate nonprofits working in certain areas, spreading fear across the sector that our status could be revoked as the result of politics. We do know there is legislation working its way through the Colorado legislature to try and protect nonprofits from these federal tailwinds, but what else would you do in your role as Secretary of State to protect the Colorado nonprofit sector and ensure we can continue to deliver our critical services to communities?
Thank you so much for the question. Thank you for your service to the community too. What an outstanding group of individuals you all are. So I want to start by saying that the nonprofit community has also been really central to my work in the legislature. I think you know a little bit about my record. So all those policies that I talked about before, they were driven by leaders in the nonprofit community because they're standing up and saying, we need to change the statute to better serve our community, whether it's people with disabilities, older Coloradans, environmental groups, et cetera. Also, I told you my dad and his side of the family, they're farmers and we raise livestock. My mom, on the other hand, right out of college, she became a case manager. And then she was the Multiple Sclerosis Society's local director. And then she ran an independent living center for people with disabilities for almost 20 years. So I grew up in the nonprofit community, and it's really, really close and dear to my heart, and I understand the value that it brings, demonstrated by those excellent statistics. That was my upbringing. And so in the state legislature, time and time again, I voted to strengthen the community, provide those protections. We're in new territory with everything. What she just described, having to protect nonprofits and their status and the communities they serve, because the president disagrees with their political stances is really disturbing, unacceptable, and yes, we're going to take care of it. As Secretary of State, you know that office, yes, voting rights are a huge part of what I'll be doing. But the other side of the department serves the not-for-profit community and the business community in terms of their filings and interactions with the department. And so it has been a constant communication, again, through my time in the legislature. Here are some ways that we could improve the systems. Here's what we could do. So I will continue to have those relationships. Another strength of my candidacy is that from day one, those nonprofit communities and those leaders and those individual organizations already have an established relationship with me because I have been working on their behalf for almost 12 years. So we're going to formalize, thank you. Just like my work in the Senate, but we're going to formalize those relationships too. And so whether that looks like a round table or even a geographic representation, that you will have an actual and consistent, constant, and permanent voice in terms of feedback to the Secretary of State's office about what we need to be doing in partnership with the legislature. And there again, I'm the only candidate in this race with any experience of turning the needs of the nonprofit community into direct action at the legislature. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and just a reminder to everybody to speak directly into the mic. We got a comment. It's hard to hear some folks in the back. All right, so we'd like to invite Brittany Packard up to ask a question about gender-affirming care to our Attorney General candidates. Okay, yeah, sorry, Brittany Packard to ask a question about gender-affirming care to our Attorney General candidates.
Good afternoon. I'm Brittany Packard, and my partner and I are parents of a transgender child. Our daughter told us she was trans a couple of months after she turned 4. She collapsed on the bathroom floor and was distraught when I told her that she wouldn't be getting her period. And that's the moment that we knew that we couldn't deny that that was her identity. My partner and I are a part of a small, tight-knit group of parents here, transgender parents, and even though we are small, I know some of these parents who have lost gender-affirming care for their children, and it's been very hard for them. Our daughter is 7 now, but the possibility that she might not have access to gender-affirming care is terrifying. And we continue to see attacks on trans kids from legislatures and even the court. So my question is, what are your plans to ensure transgender children are protected and have access to gender-affirming care if Children's continues to deny care?
Brittany, thank you for your question and for your strength and courage and leadership on this issue, so thank you very much. I appreciate it. So I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do as Attorney General, but let me start with what I've already done as District Attorney of Boulder County. And it actually, my answer begins with this. When we finish this at 4 o'clock, I'm going to jump in the car. I would say speed back, but I don't want to confess to any traffic offenses. Speed back to a Rocky Mountain Equality event in Boulder. Because since 2018, they've been a partner and ally in the fight for our trans community members, and that fight is on now more than ever, and I promise you to continue fighting alongside you and your family. So when I became district attorney in 2018 and I met with Rocky Mountain Equality, they had a long list of hate crimes that had been committed against members of the LGBTQ+ community. And the police had a very short list. And we immediately recognized, I realized, that it's because people didn't have the belief or reason to trust law enforcement. So I launched the first district attorney hate crimes initiative in the entire state of Colorado. And we did a number of things. Thank you. We improved and required training for law enforcement. We improved and required training for prosecutors. We started a group of law enforcement liaisons specially dedicated to working with members of the trans community so we could build more trust and rapport and stand up and fight for them in court when their rights are violated and when hate crimes are committed against them. As your next Attorney General, I promise you I'll take that hate crimes initiative statewide. Also, and right now, the attacks on our trans community are happening because the Trump administration views trans community members and immigrants in the same way, and the attacks are on against both communities. And the AG has a central role in standing and fighting for vulnerable and marginalized communities, and that's the kind of work I've done my entire career. So the AG's office can, and Phil Weiser has, I should give Phil a well-deserved shout out on this. He's done a good job representing hospitals who have their funding threatened because they provide gender-affirming care. So I've already met with the leaders of Denver Health, UC Health, Boulder Community Hospital, and other hospital networks throughout the state because they have their funding being cut because they provide gender-affirming care. The AG's office, I will have the sole responsibility of taking the Trump administration to court to keep Colorado's funding coming in and to make sure hospitals aren't being denied a funding for doing the right thing and providing for you and your family members. And as your Attorney General, I promise to do exactly that. That has to happen. The other piece of this, in addition to not tolerating hate crimes and also defending our funding, is raising awareness in support of the trans community and being an outspoken advocate and leader, as I have been for the last 8 years as District Attorney of Boulder County. That's why I'll be leaving here tonight to go stand with them, and I look forward to standing with you as your next Attorney General. Thank you, Brittany.
Thank you.
David.
Brittany, thank you so much for your story. Like parent to parent, really hard to hear and really terrifying. I look forward to the opportunity to work on these issues with you when you're in the state legislature. Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. I want to start just by taking a step back and talking about the project, what they're up to right now. So for many years, I've been working on this issue called surveillance, wages, and prices, how the largest companies in the world spy on us in order to charge us more and to pay us less. Right now, if you Google an obituary, you may be charged more for a plane ticket because they know that you're more desperate to travel, right? A nurse right now in Colorado working through an app could get paid less because she's been searching for divorce attorneys online and she may be more desperate for a job. So I've been working on these issues for many years, and I took this issue to the Federal Trade Commission, and under the Biden administration, the Federal Trade Commission started to investigate this issue, stand up to the corporations spying on us in order to steal from us. The Trump administration came in and they dismissed the investigation of surveillance, wages, and prices. Do you know what they started investigating instead? Gender-affirming care, right? So as opposed to going after the corporations spying on us and stealing from us, they want to bully trans kids. That's what this project is about, right? Like that's what they're doing, bullying people. And well, the corporations and billionaires pillage our economy. We have to be clear-eyed about that. There is so much that the Attorney General needs to do to stand up and fight on these issues right now. Yes, absolutely. We're going to need to continue to take on the Trump administration when it tramples our rights. But we also need to use the levers of this office to protect against the institutions right here in Colorado engaging bullying or complicity, right? Let's be clear-eyed about what's happening right now with Denver Health. Let's be clear-eyed about what's happening right now with Denver Health and with Children's. The threats to their funding have, in very large part, been enjoined in litigation brought by Attorney General Weiser. They frankly, at this moment, don't need to be stopping gender-affirming care to kids. They don't need to be, right? And there is a very strong argument that I think needs to be explored that in cutting off gender-affirming care, they are violating Colorado law, right? The Attorney General needs to make sure that if we are giving in, right, if we are engaging in the bullying of this administration or acting complicit with this administration, that we let them know that if they violate Colorado law, we're going to hold them accountable under Colorado law. Even institutions right here in Colorado. Absolutely essential that we do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we don't have a person to ask this next question, but we're doing a little improvisation here, which is you all mentioned that you have come to the Western Slope because it's a beautiful place to be and we're known for our public lands. And most of our counties in the Western Slope are in fact 50% or more public lands. So it's a huge part of our land base, our economies, our identity, our cultures. And as we know, right now we're facing historic attack on some of those public lands, trying to sell them, but also just giving them away for corporate extraction at pennies on the dollar. And also seeing our right to comment on those public lands being taken away in attempts to roll back the National Environmental Policy Act. We would like to start with candidates for Attorney General, and then of course Senator Danielson, if you have anything to say, even though it's not related to Secretary of State role, we would invite your voice on this. David, could we start with you?
Thank you. You guys hear me? Good. Okay. Thanks so much for the question. Again, we just have to take a step back and realize how absurd it. Oh, there you go. How absurd it is, what we're facing right now, right? Like we're talking about billionaires, corporations, private equity firms, oil and gas companies, pillaging our country, right? Like, stripping us of our public lands. It is one of the most absurd and dangerous embodiments, right, of the oligarchy that has seized control of our country and that's stealing the American dream from all of us. And we have to fight back every step of the way and use all the tools that we can to hold the Trump administration accountable, to intervene in these cases wherever possible, to use all the tools of the Administrative Procedure Act, all the environmental tools that we have under environmental law to intervene, to protect our public lands. We absolutely have to. And also, we've got to do much more to hold accountable all of those who are harming us while extracting profits from our public lands, right? It's why I'd create an environmental justice and protection unit in the Attorney General's office, right? Because right now, most of the work of the Attorney General in protecting our environment happens through representation of the state's agencies, like the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Frankly, that's not up to the task at this moment in holding, for example, oil and gas companies accountable when they pollute our air, when they pollute our water. It was the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment that fined Suncor $2 million when they made $2 billion in a single quarter. Our team determined that's the equivalent of a $65 parking ticket for polluting our air and water for years and years and years. So the Attorney General is the lawyer not just for the agencies of Colorado, but for the people of Colorado. And we got to go on offense for working families, right? Using all the tools of the office to do it. We also just have to explore all the systems that have existed for a very long time in Colorado to protect the wealthy and powerful and the billionaire class. It is totally absurd that we have the worst rules in the country among all the Western states when it comes to access to our rivers and streams for fly fishing, for rafting. And it just doesn't need to be that way. As Attorney General, as I have said on day one, I would tear up the old legal memos that sow confusion about who can access our rivers and streams and clarify that the rivers and streams that have been navigable and were navigable at statehood belong to the people of Colorado, right? And to do that in a way that protects the legitimate interests of farmers, ranchers, and property owners. We can do that. We absolutely can. Building a brighter and better future involves examining all the systems that have been in place to protect the wealthy and powerful in Colorado for a very long time. Thank you.
Mr. Doherty.
Thank you for the question. And as Attorney General, I will stand and fight to protect and preserve our public lands. That is my promise to you. As you highlighted, over 50% of the lands out here are public lands. Statewide, 35% of our lands are federal public lands. This is something that should unite people from all across the political spectrum. And in fact, we saw that last year with Trump's terrible tax bill. Selling off public lands for a profit was part of that bill, except the American people spoke out, and the public outcry is why that got stripped out of that bill. It's why being in rooms like this all across the state of Colorado fill me with hope, because the power of the people is why we're going to win back the House and hold Donald Trump accountable when the time comes, and that time has to be now. I will share with you that the outdoors of Colorado is why I'm with you today. I was supervising 1,300 people at the Manhattan DA's office, and my wife Antonia and I would come out to Colorado because I'm an ultra runner and a trail runner. In fact, I'll just tell you quickly, we came out here once so I could run the Pikes Peak Marathon. It was my first time seeing Pikes Peak. And I remember looking up at the mountain and telling Antonia, training in Brooklyn is not what's going to prepare me for what's about to happen. But every time we'd be back at the airport and we'd look at one another and say, why are we going back to New York City? What are we doing? We could live in Colorado. And when I got a job offer from the Attorney General's office, the decision was made and we moved out here. And I look at our public lands as something that have to be cherished and by the Attorney General's office, protected. That means taking the Trump administration to court, and that's why having legal experience as a fighter and a prosecutor matters now more than ever, and that's what I'm going to bring to the Attorney General's office. The public lands that we have to protect require that kind of passion, that kind of energy, and that kind of experience. But it's also about making sure that our public lands aren't being sold off to oil and gas companies, which we see being sold off all too often right now, and it cannot happen. We see oil and gas companies operating in this state, and the legislature, including our senator, did a great job putting a lot of protections in place. But we see oil and gas still being shipped out of the state for profit at way too high a rate. And we have to, and I promise you I will, fight for legislative changes to put limits on that, because our lands are being exploited. Do you agree with me on that? And we are at a critical time for our environment. As the head of the criminal section for the Attorney General's office, as the Deputy Attorney General, I oversaw the environmental crimes unit for the office. The AG's office has the power to bring criminal prosecutions for environmental violations, also civil actions for environmental violations, and also oversee and represent the CDPHE. We can and must, and I promise you will, do so much better to protect our environment and our public lands. We have to do it. The time is now. Thank you.
Senator Danielson, any thoughts? No, it's not the purview of the Secretary of State, but you've been working on this for a while too.
Yeah, you're right, it's not directly linked, but it's so critical to each and every one of us as Coloradans, right? And yes, I am proud of the work that I've done in the legislature over the last 12 years. Every single time we've been tested, my vote is solid and consistent in favor of protecting public lands and our beautiful air and water and our wonderful state of Colorado and everything we have to offer. I think it's also really important to note that when we step up in November, our congressional slate is also going to have a lot to do with this moving forward, which is why it is so incredibly critical that we engage at the as much as we each and individually possibly can to get those Republicans out of office so that the Democrats can take care of this for us in DC. But it is important to know that there is a choice in this race for Secretary of State, and one of us does have a solid and consistent voting record on the environment, on public lands, and protecting our air and water. And that is me, and it's part of why I went to Denver to serve too. So you can expect that consistently when and if my new role requires it, as I have for these last 12 years. Thanks again.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, thanks for bearing with us through a little pivot here. We are now pleased to welcome, please join me in welcoming, current Attorney General and candidate for governor, Phil Weiser, to the stage.
And we would like Connie Overton, come on up, get ready to. All right, we have a couple questions that are specifically for you, Attorney General Weiser, because we think they relate mostly to the governor's position. So sorry to put you on the spot as soon as you walk in, but here we go. All right, so this is Connie Overton from Fruta with a question about electricity affordability.
Brittany's much taller than I am. Thank you for attending today, and thank you to Western Colorado Alliance for putting this great event on. My question is about the never-ending rate increases for rural co-op members and the burden it places on Western Slope residents. I retired from Holy Cross Energy in Glenwood Springs about 5 years ago, and I was really glad when we decided to move to Fruta and we bought a house that was in Grand Valley Power's service territory, until I realized the rate we were going to pay. The first year we lived in Fruta, they instituted an on-peak program for electricity used between 4 and 9 p.m. And that rate was twice as much as the off-peak hours. And they also increased their monthly solar connectivity fee to $31.50 from $30 a month. Recently, they raised their rates yet again, including raising the monthly solar connectivity fee to $33.50 and a new demand charge when the member owner uses an appliance that creates a demand on the electric system. Think about your clothes dryer, your dishwashers, etc. And I understand that co-ops need to cover their expenses, including paying for their electricity they provide to their members and owners. And I have a strong desire to see the state meet its greenhouse gas reduction goals and move to a stronger reliance on renewable energy. But the rising costs are squeezing our community at a time when affordability is at the top of everyone's mind. Grand Valley Power is not alone. Other Western Colorado co-ops, including Holy Cross and Delta Montrose, had to raise their rates and institute demand charges also. And in DMEA's case, they had to raise their rates for the first time in 6 years. How can Western Slope rural co-ops address rising costs for their member owners while still moving towards utilizing more renewable energy resources, specifically for the working families and the farmers that have to use a fair amount of electricity during the on-peak hours?
Right, Mr. Weiser.
And your name again was?
Connie.
Connie. Thank you so much, Connie, and thank you all for being here. Thank you, Western Colorado Alliance, for making this possible. Let's give it up. The point that Connie has raised up is, what is our energy future? How do we make sure we hit 3 goals? It's affordable, it's clean, and it's resilient. The good news is these goals are not in tension with one another, and there's a way forward to meet them. In fact, Holy Cross Energy, a co-op, is about as good an example of what that future can look like. And I want to describe it and then talk about how we work to get there. First, I do want to say, despite Chris Wright's efforts to the contrary, we are going to be closing coal plants here in Colorado. It's our decision, it's not the federal government's, and these plants are the dirtiest, most expensive, least reliable forms of energy. By contrast, let's talk about solar energy. Got some fans here. In South Africa, over the last 5 years, 10% of the nation's energy supply is by distributed solar energy. That's an incredible movement. We are on the precipice of a revolution in how we get our energy, and if you want to know what it looks like, look at South Africa, look at China. Other countries are moving to the 21st century. Meanwhile, our federal government is trying to move us back to the 20th century. We're not going back. Connie, part of how we have to make this more affordable is to create opportunities for innovation and competition towards the customer. So you can have more distributed solar, more distributed storage, so that customers have more choice, more flexibility, and you are able to be more in control of your energy. Because if you're in parts of our state that have shutoffs of energy because of the risk of wildfires, having local energy and storage gives you more resilience. So we've got a way forward. We just need the right leadership to get there. It'd be an honor to be your next governor. You can learn more about my plans at philforcolorado.com.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Leslie Robinson, please make your way on up. All right, we have one more question for Attorney General Weiser, and then we have a question for everybody, so we'll be right back to that. All right, this is Leslie Robinson from Rifle, Colorado.
Good afternoon. I'm Leslie Robinson, Chair of the Grand Valley Citizens Alliance, representing nearly 30 years of community activism in Garfield County to protect surface owner rights and public health and safety in the face of oil and gas development. My background intertwines with local energy history. Although I missed the Rulison 1969 atomic bomb, an unsuccessful experiment to frack natural gas, I moved to the Rifle area just in time for the 1970s oil shale boom. And then the 1980s, I barely survived the bust, as many of you have as well. During the natural gas boom that started about 15 years ago, we watched as 12,000 natural gas wells were drilled around Rifle by nearly 100 rigs in 5 years. GVCA members with Western Colorado Alliance fought for Battlement Mesa residents when they were struggling against oil and gas development less than 1,000 feet from their door. And we haven't stopped. In the oil and gas industry, what goes up comes right down. Today, we are in another energy-driven bust, where most of the wells in Garfield County are now aging, low producing, and no longer taxed by the state. GVC members were once engaged with new production and fracking, but now we're more concerned about the state's plugging and abandonment policies, which are not strong enough, and that we fear we will inherit thousands of abandoned wells that taxpayers will have to clean up. In these years, I have helped mentor other community groups across the state active in oil and gas organizing. So I'm asking my question representing the many impacted resident voices who join me in frustration with the current administration, the Polis administration, where all oil and gas related legislation has been corked for the past 3 years with threatened vetoes. We believe there's a lot of work to do on permitting decisions, ensuring companies clean up their mess. Air and water protective legislation is needed. We need to defend disproportionately impacted communities more and regulate toxic air pollution, among other oil and gas issues. My question to you, how would your administration work with residents looking to strengthen public health and safety protections from oil and gas development and ensure legislators are responding to their constituents' concern? How will your administration be different?
You gotta love Leslie. Leslie, here's how I'm different. My job is to work for the people. I am not taking corporate PAC money. I am not fueled by a PAC with out-of-state billionaires. I am the people's lawyer, and I will be the people's governor. To give you a few examples, when I reviewed the merger between Kroger and Albertsons, City Market and Safeway, and I held 19 town halls, including here in Grand Junction, a lot of people said, citizens, workers, consumers, can you really do anything against these billion-dollar companies? To which I said, watch. when I started hearing about the harms from social media and our kids going down dark holes, not sleeping, getting notifications and alerts, all hours of the night, people were saying, what can you do against one of the most powerful companies? I said, watch. I am not afraid to take on any company, even the most powerful oil and gas company. When I am working for you, that's my job. There's only one candidate in this race who's here today for governor, and thank you. And there's only one candidate in this race who knows what it is to be an enforcer. And what we need our Department of Public Health to be is an enforcement agency. Leslie, I share your frustration. This morning, I was with our Southern Ute tribal leaders looking at the 5th largest gasoline pipeline spill in U.S. history. And I was hearing the concerns they have. And I was committing to be a partner with them. And the problem with the way our Department of Public Health is set up is it's too reactive. I want to make it proactive. And when you talk about meeting with community groups, you do not need to speculate on what type of governor I will be, because you can look at what type of attorney general I've been. Or I've met with community groups, with those who live in Commerce City, Cultivando, and others, with the tribes, and I can't wait to meet with your group, Leslie. And finally, we need to bring a sense of urgency to plugging those orphan wells, which are literally accidents waiting to happen. Thank you.
All right. Mesa County District Attorney Dan Rubenstein, please come on up. This is a question for all candidates. In this case, we are asking us to limit our responses to 2 minutes.
And at this time, please join us in welcoming candidate for Secretary of State Amanda Gonzalez to the stage.
All right, take it away, Dan.
All right, thank you. I'm Dan Rubenstein. I'm the district attorney here in 21st Judicial District. Because of an election security breach that occurred here in Mesa County, it resulted in the county attorney and the Secretary of State working together to remove our elected clerk, Tina Peters. And at the same time, to remove her from being the designated election official, and at the same time, Attorney General Weiser and I working together to prosecute her. The Attorney General's office, of course, having concurrent prosecution authority for Title I offenses with the district attorney. Throughout the multi-hour presentation of Ms. Peters at her sentencing, Judge Barrett kept asking her supporters and even her if they found a single ballot that was cast improperly, and they could not point to one. Through all of the challenges during her prosecution, multiple reports were generated by computer experts claiming to have uncovered potential security threats, yet they uncovered no tampering with the elections. One group of purported experts even created something referred to as Report 3, which claimed to be hard evidence of the election being hacked. Upon closer look through my DA investigators, the code anomaly they discovered was nothing more than the elections manager rebooting the computer because a couple of ballots were stuck in the scanner and she could not reset it. Throughout the process, we learned that the election system in Colorado is actually quite secure and run quite well. The Secretary of State has a lot of proactive and reactive authority to promote election integrity and security. The Attorney General has mostly reactive but civil and criminal authority to promote election integrity and security, and also the authority to sue to stop legislation that would improperly dictate certain election procedures. If elected to your respective offices, what steps would you hope to take to promote election integrity and security in Colorado? And specific to Attorney General Weiser, who's running for governor, do you have any plans to pardon or commute the sentence of Ms. Peters?
All right. And we're going to start with Amanda and move on down. So Amanda, please, 2 minutes.
Hello, there we go. It is so good to see you all. I'm Amanda Gonzalez. I'm currently the clerk and recorder in Jefferson County, where I run elections for nearly 500,000 voters. And I know firsthand that election security starts with both the rule of law and making sure that we are following every single law and rule to the letter, and also instilling trust in our community. Two of the first things that I did when I became clerk is I created a full-time community engagement position so that we were out in the community getting accurate information about elections to everyone who needed it. The second thing we did is we created a first of its kind community advisory committee that was focused on transparency and modernization and accessibility, so that we could create trusted messengers throughout the community who were getting accurate information about elections, because so much of the lies and disinformation that we are seeing is about creating distrust, about telling people not to participate in our elections. And so it is the job of the Secretary of State to ensure not only that we are following the letter of the law, not only that our elections are secure, because they already are, but that people know that, they trust our elections, and they're actually going to show up and participate. That is the whole point of all of this, is making sure that everyone's voices are accurately heard. And my job as Secretary of State is going to be to ensure that every eligible voter cast their ballot and have that ballot accurately counted.
Senator Danielson.
Thank you so much for the question. So as I said before, I helped build the systems that we use now, the systems that Colorado voters love and trust and utilize at an extremely high level, that the county clerks use to administer their elections. From 2013, when we built the Voter Modernization Act, to all the legislation that I carried and passed in the last several years to build that system, included security built right in. So I don't just know the systems, I helped build them, and I've been defending them ever since. What we need in the Secretary of State also is a voice of reason and consistency, and a trusted voice to be speaking back to the electorate day to day to day. So that when that chaos from Trump comes in, when those lies are all over the place, this is one office that needs to partner with the Attorney General's office and the gubernatorial staff, where we are messaging back to the electorate confidence and truth about what the systems really are and what your rights as voters are. And I, as I mentioned before, have been standing up to power during the Polis administration to get things done and protect your rights for the last nearly 8 years. And so I also want to say, the Tina Peters scenario, I stood up publicly and demanded that the governor not commute the sentence, not transfer her, because she is the last January 6th type of an insurrectionist that's being held to account, and we can't let our state be bullied by Donald Trump. For the security of Mesa County, obviously, but all across the state, and to prevent that kind of a blueprint from being utilized in other states, I stood up, I circulated a petition, and I continue to call on the governor to stand firm.
Thank you. Mr. Doherty.
Thank you for the question. As Attorney General, I will fight to protect mail-in ballots and to keep ICE away from our ballot boxes. And if you're worried about how divided this country has become, this story should fill you with hope. Because District Attorney Dan Rubenstein, a Republican, found out that Tina Peters likely engaged in criminal conduct. He didn't sweep it under the rug. He launched a full investigation. And when he realized the depths of what she had done and how complex and how important the case was going to be, a person and prosecutor of integrity, he called the Democratic Attorney General, Phil Weiser, who answered the phone and sent help to Dan Rubenstein. The two of them teamed up because when it comes to justice, partisanship has no role. That's what it means to stand and fight for justice. The two of them were honored by the League of Women Voters recently for their shared commitment to protecting our elections and holding Tina Peters fully accountable. Can you join me in thanking both of them? That's what it means to fight to protect our elections with integrity. And in Boulder County, we had a state legislator who engaged in election fraud. And when I discovered that, I launched an investigation. She is a member of my party, and I'm a proud Democrat. But when it comes to standing and fighting for justice, I will always do it without fear and without favor. I took that case to court. She was held fully accountable and convicted of the felony related to the election fraud crime she committed. She is now working on behalf of my opponent's campaign, not David, on behalf of my opponent's campaign. You can't say you stand for election integrity and have someone who committed election fraud coming after me as your next Attorney General. I will stand and fight for election integrity because our future depends on it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Mr. Seligman.
Hear me there? There you go. Thanks so much for the question, District Attorney Rubenstein. Thanks so much for your work here in Mesa County and for your work on the Tina Peters case. I want to talk for a second about why the suggestion that Tina Peters would receive clemency from the governor is so dangerous. One of the most important tools that we will have going forward to safeguard our democracy is state law. State law to hold accountable those who may try to corrupt our elections, those who may trample our rights. Colorado law is unique in many ways, and powerful in many ways, including that our anti-corruption statutes in Colorado explicitly apply to federal officials. We're at a dark moment in our country, and we may need to use the law boldly and courageously to take on these threats, right? So Donald Trump was granted effectively absolute immunity from the United States Supreme Court for attempting to interfere in the election in Georgia, but Stephen Miller doesn't have absolute immunity. Tulsi Gabbard doesn't have absolute immunity. If we see efforts to corrupt our democracy in violation of state law, we will need to use the law boldly and courageously to hold officials accountable, including federal officials. State law is going to be an absolutely critical part of that project. Clemency for Tina Peters removes that absolutely essential tool. Fundamentally, this isn't, though, only about standing up to the Trump administration. We absolutely have to. We have to keep ICE away from our elections. We have to preserve our mail-in ballots. This is also about how we protect power and voice for working people, because fundamentally, what's going to save this country is the only thing that ever has, working people coming together. It's another reason I am so disappointed in the governor for vetoing the Worker Protection Act. He can't tell me that he's resisting Donald Trump's attacks on our democracies if he's not going to stand up for power and voice for working people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Seligman. Attorney General Weiser.
So District Attorney Doherty talked about a phone call that Dan and I had. And I'd like to share with you my recollection of that call. Dan called me up, and it was exactly as District Attorney Doherty said, which is we both had jurisdiction. And what you need to know is there are two situations that could happen that didn't happen here. The first is like a turf battle where we're each trying to do it, and that's not good. The second is what I'll call cowardice on behalf of a district attorney unwilling to prosecute a member of his or own political party. And you've got here a profile in courage in Dan Rubenstein. A lot of DAs would have said, this case is a hot potato. Here, let me toss it to somebody else. That's not what Dan said. Dan said to me, I'm the elected Republican. I should lead this prosecution to show it's about the rule of law. And I said, Dan, I agree. How can I help? And he said, give me your 2 best prosecutors to help me. And then, Dan, I think you said, could you throw in an investigator too? And we did, and we prosecuted her, and she is now convicted and sentenced to almost 9 years incarceration. And I have made it very clear, publicly and privately to the governor, and publicly to all of you, she needs to stay exactly where she is. And there's a very powerful reason, and it gets to the core of the type of leadership I will bring as governor. When you are up against a bully trying to intimidate you, the last thing you do is show weakness, accommodate, and make nice. You stand for what you believe in, and you fight for it.
Dan, you had a closing thought.
I asked permission from our moderators to actually follow up and finish that story. It was a phone call that happened that day, but I was on the phone with Attorney General Weiser pretty much every day for about 2 years on this. And I will let you know that all of this started because the deputy at the Secretary of State's office did not have a relationship with the district attorneys and called Attorney General Weiser to get my cell number, and that's how this all started. So for our Secretary of State candidates, I encourage the relationship, and for Attorney General Weiser, thank you for everything.
Thank you very
All
much.
right, we'd like to invite Jose Chavez and Jaden Hernandez to the stage, please. All right, and we will have, this is going to be 2 questions kind of back to back, one for Attorney General Weiser and then one for all candidates.
Hello, my name is Jose Luis Chavez. How are you all? District 51 is doing more with less. Rising costs, the inadequate state funding means we're making a real trade-off. Larger class size, fewer support for students, staff stretched out to burnout, and we're closing schools. I'm not talking about a bunch of extras. I'm speaking about basic supports. Mental health services, the intervention teachers, retaining quality staff. Rural and Western Slope districts like ours feel this is even more because we don't have the same tax base as the metro areas. We need the state to place importance on sustainability, equitably, and school funding, especially for districts like D51. This means fully funding education, addressing regional inequities, and giving districts flexibility to meet local needs. What I am asking is simple. Invest in our students at the level that matches what we expect from them.
Jaden has a follow-up. One moment, Jaden, come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Jaden Hernandez. I'm a junior at Olathe High School in Olathe, Colorado. I've come to share my perspective on the recent budget cuts in public schools resulting from our state's budget deficit. On March 31st, the superintendent representing my district in Montrose County issued a letter to families stating significant budgets will be taking place for the upcoming school year. In her letter, she shared cuts would range from $1.5 to $5.4 million. These reductions are starting with staff cuts, yet even our superintendent acknowledged these cuts alone would not be enough to solve the problem. For a small rural high school like mine, these decisions have a major impact. Our school has been asked to eliminate 5 teaching positions, resulting in the removal of even more classes and the reallocation of teachers, including one with over 20 years of teaching experience to brand new subjects. Some courses will now also be combined for the first time next school year, including English classes that will place multiple grade levels in the same classes. For a school already so limited in resources, we're losing even more access to a well-rounded education, and we're frustrated. This is becoming a reality for countless students across Colorado, especially in rural communities. My question to you, Attorney General Weiser, is this. What would your administration do to ensure this does not become a permanent reality for students in Colorado, particularly those in rural schools?
When I think about my core commitment, my why for what I most want to accomplish. It is addressing the concerns you mentioned. And I've been to District D51 to learn about how you're addressing the problem of how cell phones were distracting students. And your leadership there has made a difference for our whole state. You've touched on that our kids are not okay. On the youth mental health front, they are hurting and they need more support. Teachers in Colorado are not being paid what they deserve. And I've heard it said that we have more teachers certified as such who are not teaching in Colorado than any state in the union. I also am concerned, I'd add these to your list. Your list was fabulous. We have not invested in career and technical education the way we need to in Colorado. So I've got 3 commitments here. Supporting young people in youth mental health, supporting teachers and better student-to-teacher ratios, and supporting career and technical education. I need to change Tabor to be successful in filling that vision. I'm going to need your help because here's the situation we find ourselves. When Coloradans are asked, what do you think of Tabor? 61% say they like it because this is the world we're in, because they would like to be able to choose if they vote on taxes going up, and they think it keeps the state honest, which means we've got the burden to persuade our fellow citizens that we're not investing in our future right now, and that our fiscal restraints are going to undermine our future unless we do something to change this antiquated regime. And I promise you, I'm willing to put in the work, the hard work of building that support community by community, the way I went to 19 communities and did town halls about the City Market Safeway merger that we stopped in court. And the reason I'm optimistic is schools like Adam 12, which have the same sorts of challenges, they've gotten mill levy overrides at the local level when you make the case. But we've got to do this at the state level because they're districts that are counting on us. Our kids are counting us. We have to do better. Thank you.
Jaden has a question for all candidates.
As you're already aware, I'm a high school student here in Western Colorado. I'm here today representing a student-led organization called West Slope Youth Voice, which aims to support people in our communities by advocating for student issues and amplifying youth voices with elected leaders. Not long ago, I simply didn't care about civic engagement because, like many people across Colorado, I felt disconnected from the process and was unsure if my voice was relevant. Through my involvement with West Slope Youth Voice, I've learned just how important it is to advocate for policy efforts even when we're not able to vote. That's why I find it vital to participate in conversations like this for the sake of ensuring our voices are heard. I've connected with students across the Western Slope and realized over time how similar our hopes and aspirations are. We just want to create a better future for the next generation of Coloradoans, which happens to be us. I've also had the privilege of traveling to the state capitol twice to advocate for youth priorities alongside other ambitious students, many of whom are in attendance today, with the goal of making voices like ours heard by elected officials. However, we've learned that just because legislators and elected officials pledge support for youth-based priorities doesn't necessarily mean they're willing to listen to the people most affected by their decisions. Just last month, I spoke with my representative as a constituent advocating for a newly introduced bill that would expand the Seal of Biliteracy program across all districts in Colorado. After I shared my story about the importance of language opportunities as a Mexican-American student and the demographics of my community, my representative ignored my concerns and instead made a side remark saying, "Yo hablo poquito español, piedra trabajo," followed by, "I learned those from my workers in my landscaping business," in a condescending and mocking tone before walking away. While this interaction is infuriating to say the least, it's not the first time students in West Slope Youth Voice have felt our voices overshadowed by elected officials. I share this as an example to highlight how vital it is not only for students to advocate, but for leaders to truly listen to us. Many students, including myself, will be voting for the first time this upcoming election cycle, including the primaries. We want elected officials who will listen to us and not ones who build their platforms on platitudes about supporting the youth. So my question to all of you is this. What steps will you take in your elected role to advocate for Colorado youth and ensure we are active participants in shaping our state today?
We'll just go down the line again. So, Amanda.
Right? Youth are the folks that have to deal with the future, right? If we don't have clean air or clean water or access to healthcare or be able to afford a damn house, it is the youth that is going to have to live with that, right? And oftentimes, young people aren't listened to because you're not the ones funding campaigns, right? We all know that it is often the wealthy donor class that our elected officials are beholden to. And that cannot continue to be the case, which is, yes. So my background is I was the executive director of Colorado Common Cause, where I wrote a number of our election laws, including the one that dramatically expanded that ballots have to be translated in many more counties. I was also on the board for New Era Colorado, where over the years we have registered more than 50,000 young people to have their voices heard in our democracy. Because you are right, it is not enough to give lip service. We have to fundamentally change systems so that our voices are heard, right? I was the first in my family to go to college. I was the first in my family to go to law school, and I graduated with more than $120,000 in debt, right? That limits people's future. That limits what careers they can take. It limits how they can participate in their community. And we have to have a functional democracy where we are actually listening to youth so that we can protect those futures. As your Secretary of State, I am going to listen to you. I am going to make sure that we are creating laws and systems that actually facilitate participation, because we have no other option.
Senator Danielson.
There it is. Thanks so much for being here today and for being such an outstanding young leader. It takes a lot of courage, and it's really something to applaud. So I heard your story, what you said about your experience at the state capitol. So I don't have to talk. So first of all, shameful that an elected representative would be so disrespectful and even bigoted and not listening to you when you're doing this for the first time. Shameful. And I will tell you that I don't have to speculate about what I would do to respond to the needs of youth voters, because I have done. And so when they come to the Capitol to talk to me, I listen to them and I turn that into policy that actually reflects their wishes. And so I want to say, I hope you come back. And when you're done with the Republicans who represent you, you come on over to my office and we will have a conversation. Yes. So we put into policy that young people can pre-register to vote. All those laws that I passed while I was in the Senate to expand access to the ballot, that increases participation for new and youth voters. In terms of Tabor and our limitations, it is real and severe. But what I have done in the capacity as my time as a senator is what could be done. I created the apprenticeship directory so that young people and honestly older people moving around the workforce have some other option than coming out of school with a bunch of debt. I did the teacher pay raise fund to try and address some of the issues that were brought up by educators who are either leaving the profession or never joining. Keep in mind, I went to a school that was 40 miles by 40 miles wide, and we had about 200 students in it. I know about the issues facing rural youth and the challenges that educators have in meeting those needs. And so again, I'm the one in this race that doesn't have to say what I will do to respond to you. I have, and I always will.
Jaden, thank you for the question. When I look at Jaden, I think the future is bright. Do you agree with me? When I saw Jaden and his friends and fellow students in the lobby, I went over right away before we started to say, what brings you guys here today? Because it's people like Jaden and his friends and other young people that we need to build a better future for this state, and that starts right here and right now. I will share with you that when I talk to high school students and young people, which I do all the time as district attorney, the most recent time I did it was yesterday, literally. I think we have a better and stronger generation than coming up for us than I had when I was back in high school. I really believe that they have a better chance at building a better future for Colorado than my generation did, but only if we clear the path for them. They face greater challenges than we did. When I was in high school, if I saw people running down the hallway, it was to watch a fist fight. Now they're running from a mass shooter. When I think about mental health and the impacts of social media and drug use and fentanyl, when I was in high school, if you chose to have a sip of a drink, you weren't gonna die. We have high school kids who are being poisoned in the state of Colorado by some of the drugs that are out there. And I see it time and time again. So I've done work on gun violence prevention. So most recently, I launched an effort to pass out gun safes for free to gun owners in Boulder County, along with Fairview High School students and students from CU. We gave out 500 gun safes in 21 minutes. I joined with Phil Weiser, in an effort to improve social media protections when it comes to kids being dealt guns and drugs and sexually exploitative material over social media apps, where it's happening all the time right now. It's no longer on our streets, it's on the computers and the phones. And Phil and I teamed up with others, and we brought that legislation. It had strong bipartisan support, which I appreciate, and it was vetoed by the governor, which I find to be unacceptable when our youth are at stake. Yes. So I will continue to work with young people so that they can help us build a better future, and that starts right now. And Jaden, thank you so much for what you're doing. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Mr. Seligman.
Can you hear me? There you go. Jaden, you're amazing, man. You really are. You know, we're going to save this country. I know we're going to save this country. You know, when you hear people like Jaden, you're getting involved in and organizing, doing the real work day to day of bringing people together. I understand why young people feel left behind and locked out of our political system. You know, I think about the young people that I see in my law offices, right? The kids listening to their parents talk about how their wages have been stolen for years and no one has ever held their boss accountable, right? How they're getting buried in medical bills, right? The kids in the back of cars being driven by their parents, DoorDash drivers who don't even have time off or paid sick leave, right? The kids that I heard coughing in the background at the beginning of the COVID pandemic, when their parents were being denied healthy workplaces, and we led big, bold, courageous litigation, first in the nation cases, to take on meat packers and large employers that were denying their parents the safety and health and bringing home the pandemic to their kids. I understand when I hear you talk about how your school district, right, is getting underfunded when we live in one of the wealthiest states in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, when there are 100 billionaires who own homes in Aspen, right, just a couple of hours away from here. We don't need to be living this way, right? That's why your voice is so important. That's why we're building out a youth organizing component to our campaign to make sure people are registered to vote, that they're ready to vote in these primaries, that they are prepared to exercise their voice at the ballot, to fight for a better future, because they understand better than anybody that we don't need to be living this way, and the same old political platitudes aren't going to do anymore. So thank you so much, Jaden.
Thank you, Mr. Seligman. Attorney General Weiser.
Jaden, I want to thank you for representing and being a part of such an important organization, and want to make sure you stay in touch as you embark on what's going to be a very bright future. And then I want to talk about how we and others need to co-create that future for young people. Young people are hurting right now and are more lonely, disconnected, and frustrated than ever before. I've seen statistics that 18 to 22-year-old young men, 20% are doing nothing. They're not in school. They're not working. We are at a crisis moment for our youth, and fentanyl and guns are too available. When I was growing up, the biggest threat to young people was a car crash. Now, it's gun violence and it's fentanyl. And on top of that, young people are asking, do I feel hope and opportunity for my future? And as I mentioned in the last one, my number one challenge is to make sure that we make that emphatic yes. Yes, we can. Together, we can help build a better future for young people. So Jaden, let me mention a couple programs I'd like you to work with me on. First, a mentoring initiative, we call it HOPE, so that every young person has multiple mentors who they trust, helping them succeed on their dreams. Currently in Colorado, the number is only 40%. Number two, I want to create a Colorado Corps that we call young people to service across our state in teaching, nursing, counseling, law enforcement, and firefighting. And Jade, number three, I want to make sure that we're looking at a whole workforce development system at a time that we know AI is going to change everything, making sure you've got a bright future. Jaden, are you in? Let's get to work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jaden.
All right, so we're going to shift some things around because we know we have some folks who have to leave at 4, and we really want to make sure this next person gets a chance to address all of you. So we are inviting up Elvia Chavez to the stage. Do we have interpretation for Elvia also joining us on stage? So one moment, because Elvia will be making her remarks in Spanish. And this is a question for all candidates, and we're going to start with the Attorney General candidates to make sure that you can leave if you need to on time. All right. Go ahead, Elvia.
Hola, candidatos. Gracias por asistir y por escuchar mi historia. Yo me llamo Elvia y les vengo a platicar de mi preocupación sobre los cortes de lo que está sucediendo.
Hello, candidates. Thank you for being here and listening to my story. My name is Elvia, and I'm here to tell you my worries over the cuts and decisions that are happening.
Desde que comenzó la administración, yo personalmente me siento excluida de esta nación que llamo mi hogar. Emocionalmente y como residente, no me siento salva, no me siento confiada de salir a trabajar ni de asistir a eventos sociales, tal por lo que está pasando en estos tiempos de incertidumbre y miedo.
Since the beginning of this administration, I personally feel excluded from this nation I call home. Emotionally, as a resident, I do not feel safe. I don't feel confident in going out to work nor assisting social events because of what's happening during the time and fear.
He perdido familia en estos días, han sido apartados de nuestras vidas, deportados, alejados, separados de sus hijos.
I have lost family these days. I have lost family these days. They have been taken from our lives, deported, taken and separated from their children.
Estas injusticias de la administración me dan terror y coraje. Yo tenía la esperanza de ser ciudadana para poder votar y hacer una diferencia, pero veo que mi gente está siendo maltratada y deportada, saliendo de las cortes, tratando de hacer las cosas legalmente. Mi ahijado fue deportado de un gasolín, dejando a su familia abandonada, sin seguridad.
These injustices from the administration give me fear and anger. I had the hope of becoming a citizen so that I can vote to make a difference. But I see my people being hurt and coming out of the courts, attempting to do things legally. My godson was deported from a gas station, leaving his family abandoned and with no security.
No puedo regresar a trabajar por el peligro, ni salir de mi hogar por miedo de no regresar. Y temo dejar a mi esposo, quien está en silla de ruedas y me necesita. Mi hija, que tiene síndrome de Down, sin su madre.
I cannot go back to work because of the dangers it might bring, nor can I leave my home for fear or not going back and leaving my husband, who is in a wheelchair, and my daughter, who has Down syndrome, without her mother.
Ellos no miran lo que hacen las personas por este país, nuestro sacrificio, nuestro cuidado, nuestra lealtad a la oportunidad que nos brinda el sueño americano.
They do not see what our people do for this country, our sacrifice, our care, and the loyalty to the opportunities that the American dream gives us.
Yo estoy espantada, mi familia, mi comunidad está espantada, pero yo estoy aquí porque soy residente de este país. Mi voz importa y la voy a usar para que los candidatos nos escuchen.
I am scared. My family, my community is scared. But I'm here because I'm a resident of this country. My voice matters, and I'm not going to use it so that our candidates can hear us.
Gracias. Estamos preocupados de que el gobernador Polis esté cediendo a la presión federal en lugar de defender a los coloradenses vulnerables.
We are concerned that our Governor Polis is giving in to federal pressure instead of defending vulnerable Coloradans.
Quiero hacer una pregunta para ustedes. Si son elegidos, ¿cómo se opondrá firmemente a las políticas de inmigración de la administración?
I want to make a question for you guys. How will you firmly oppose the administration immigration enforcement policies?
Thank you very much, Elvia. We'll start with Mr. Was there more? Okay, we'll start with Mr. Seligman.
Gracias, Elvia. Mucho gusto. Gracias por su voz. We are seeing something unprecedented and dangerous in this country. And I get the question a lot. What will you do if ICE comes to Colorado? ICE is here, right? ICE is here. We get these calls all the time. Several months ago, a client called our office. She said that her boss told her the next time she asks for her paycheck, to get a bullet in the head and a call to ICE. Clients across the state who are talking about having conversations with their kids about what happens when they come home from school and they've been taken away by ICE, right? ICE agents leaving ace of spade cards to intimidate people here in Eagle County. One of my top priorities as Attorney General will be taking it on. It will mean, as I've been now saying for many, many months, prosecuting ICE officers when they violate our rights. I was the first Attorney General candidate in the country to say it before Minnesota. It will also mean standing up to the billionaires and corporations profiting off of our immigration detention industrial complex. Like the GEO Group, the private prison company that I've been taking on for more than a decade here in federal court in the largest human trafficking class action in American history. It's also going to mean taking on the bullies right here in Colorado. That's why we're standing up to the governor, suing him to stop him from turning over Coloradans' personal information to ICE. I think it is absurd. I think it is absurd that the governor continues to pay hundreds of dollars an hour to private lawyers, not the attorney general is not representing him in this case, but to private lawyers to continue defending his right to be complicit with the Trump administration. And it's going to mean standing up to counties, sheriffs across Colorado, including in Garfield County, in Teller County, in El Paso County, that have said that they are going to do the bidding of ICE that makes all of us less safe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Seligman. Mr. Doherty.
Thank you for your courage and your strength and for being here today. I really deeply appreciate it. Your fear is real and it is valid, and what I'm going to do as Attorney General is stand and fight for immigrants in every community across this great state. As the people's lawyer, it is a top priority for me to continue the work I've been doing for years. So since 2018, as the District Attorney for Boulder County, I've had an immigrant protection program in place. Because let's face it, both parties have failed to deliver on comprehensive immigration reform for a long time, for far too long. So since 2018, in Boulder County, law enforcement was prohibited from asking anyone their status in this country or ever reporting it to the federal government. That's what we've been doing in Boulder County for 8 years. That's what we're doing now in the state of Colorado for every law enforcement agency. Every law enforcement agency is required to follow the state law that I helped, that we got passed last year. And when they violate it, the Attorney General can and must bring sanctions like your Attorney General Phil Weiser did against the Mesa County Sheriff's Office. We have to stand and fight for immigrants in our community. On the wall of my office, in the District Attorney's office, is a picture of my grandfather in a public school classroom. My dad was the teacher. They were there for Immigrant Day. Now I do trainings, I do Know Your Rights presentations around the entire state of Colorado. I've done 4 in the last week and a half. And I talk about whether ICE needs a warrant to get inside a school. We have to go back to a time where we celebrate in this country that immigrants are a part of our past, our present, and our future, and that should be celebrated. Instead, we have masked agents running around the country, kidnapping people and deporting them without due process. And as your Attorney General, I will not stand for it. I say not on my watch. And we have to ban private prisons in the state of Colorado, and I promise you we'll do exactly that.
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Before we get to you, Senator Danielson, all of our candidates are very busy. Our candidates for Attorney General both have commitments, and they have to leave. So before you guys... Are you all right? Rock and roll. We appreciate you guys making time for us in Western Colorado. Senator Danielson.
Thank you so much for your question, for your story. It's really brave of you to come forward and do this, especially at this time. Thank you. Yes, give her a hand. So right now, again, there is one of us in this race. It's not a question mark of what I will do, because I already have. And you can point to my record in terms of how I will behave in the future. Last year, we passed a huge ICE reform package. And I co-sponsored that measure to make sure that ICE wouldn't be in our preschools, in our places of worship, and in our schools. This year, we're taking steps to go even further. So I'm supporting a slate of bills that will reduce the amount of resources that we are investing in detention facilities, that will increase the surveillance, or I should say the oversight of these facilities, to clarify masking and identification of these thugs that are in our neighborhoods right now. And in my time in the legislature, I have already done everything that we can at the state level, recognizing that some things are out of our grasp or our jurisdiction. You want legislators who are willing to go as far as they can to fight back against Donald Trump and ICE and protect our immigrant communities, our friends and neighbors who have built this thing from the ground up. That has been my record. It's established. I'm proud of it. I wish I didn't have to do it, but I promise that I will continue in my next capacity to protect our polling place, access to the ballot, and our broader Colorado communities from ICE.
Thank
you,
you
Cindy.
for your time.
Yeah, that hit really close to home. Thank you for being here. My grandmother was undocumented, and I will be the first Latina to ever serve as Colorado's Secretary of State. My Spanish is actually really terrible because my dad came home from kindergarten. Spanish is his first language. My dad came home from kindergarten with a note pinned to him that said, "Speak English at home." And my grandparents did it because that is what was safer and more acceptable. And so thank you for your courage for being up here. The moment that we are in is real. And so let me tell you what I've already done. As the executive director of Colorado Common Cause, I trained hundreds of attorneys every year in election law and stood up an election protection hotline that was nonpartisan for people who experienced any kind of voter suppression or had questions about voting. We did that in multiple languages so that voters could have their voice heard free of intimidation. As the only person running for Secretary of State who has actually run elections, I don't just talk about protecting our democracy, I've already done it. So voter intimidation, whether it is from ICE agents or DOJ or the FBI, is already illegal and will not be tolerated at our vote centers, at our drop boxes, or anywhere in Colorado. In 2024, I had an election denier come to my office with a list of 23,000 names, many of which were Latino, that they wanted off the voter rolls. And it was my legal strategy that stood up to them and said, hell no, we are not taking eligible voters off the voter rolls.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gonzalez. Attorney General Weiser.
Thank you so much for telling your story. I want to begin by telling my family's story and why this issue is personal to me. I'm a first-generation American. I'm the child and grandchild of refugees. This coming up Monday will be my mom's 81st birthday. She was born in a Nazi concentration camp on April 13th, 1945. My grandmother, like you, was hopeful, was resilient, was strong. She survived as a pregnant woman in a concentration camp. And 5 days after my mom's birth, U.S. Army soldiers from the 3rd Armored Division showed up to liberate my mom and my grandmother. And my grandmother believed what you and I believe, that our nation promises freedom and opportunity for all. That we believe in e pluribus unum. Out of many, we are one. Which is why I am proud to be one of the attorneys general defending birthright citizenship at the Supreme Court right now. And which is why, as your governor, yes, I will stand strong defending immigrants here in Colorado. It is not too much to ask that we have a system that is fair, that is sensible, and follows the rule of law. And I'm proud to say when President Trump and his Justice Department sued me personally, trying to say that Colorado has to have our law enforcement do immigration enforcement, we said, hell no, it's our sovereignty, and we just won that case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Elvia.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kay, we're ready for you. Next, we have asking a question for A.G. Weiser, running for governor. Kay Hudson-Pillar from River Valley Health in Montrose, asking a question about rural health care and Medicare. Thank you, Kay.
Thank you. All right, my name is Kay Hudson-Pillar. I'm the CEO at River Valley Family Health Centers, and we provide medical, dental, behavioral health, and pharmacy services to community members in Montrose, Delta, and Olathe. Community health centers serve 850,000 people across our state. That's 1 in 7 Coloradans. It's 1 in 4 Medicaid recipients and 1 in 2 uninsured. River Valley's current payer mix in regards to Medicaid has reduced 7%, and we've increased in uninsured by 25%. Our patients that no longer qualify for Medicaid cannot afford marketplace insurance. They're facing large out-of-pocket costs on top of food, gas, utilities, you name it, increases. These community members are putting off preventative care, such as cancer screens, dental hygiene, mental health visits, which will most likely add to healthcare costs in the future. For example, we currently have a patient that got a promotion, positive for her, kicks her off of Medicaid for that little bit of money that she increased in her salary. So she's not on Medicaid, and she can't afford the insurance that her company is offering, nor the insurance on the marketplace. And we found a mess. She can't afford to get that biopsy. She has back pain. She can't afford to get the physical therapy to help with that back pain. In dental, we recently had a patient that was removed from Medicaid. She came in with a broken tooth. While we were fixing the tooth, she had several other areas of active decay. We restored the tooth. She said, nothing else. I can't afford anything else. Don't do anything else. Without addressing that decay, that bacteria will spread, and it'll increase the likelihood that the repaired tooth will also develop another cavity. Cuts to Medicaid does not eliminate costs. What it does is shift them. So things that we could have done at a community health center is now getting taken care of at an emergency room for double and triple the prices. Medicaid allows people to have access to regular medical and dental checkups, see a doctor when they're sick, receive mental health care, and get early screenings for diseases, as well as to fill prescriptions. Without health insurance, people delay necessary and sometimes life-saving physical and mental health care. It's already difficult for persons living in the Western Slope to get the care that they need. When insurance is no longer available, we're going to all be impacted. So, how will you ensure that the state of Colorado will not continue to lose Medicaid coverage and that the Western Slope residents can still have access to affordable health care?
I just want to say, when I came here, I was told there might be a few easy questions. The point you're making, Kay, is heartbreaking and essential for us to take on. I want to lift up this point. I want universal primary health care, including mental health, for every Coloradan. What Kay just explained is the sign of a broken system. We could be leaving people without primary preventative care, and then we'll be spending a whole lot more money on chronic sick care. That's idiotic. We've got to do better than that in Colorado. I released last week my healthcare plan. There's an element that I want to lift up because it gets to part of what's broken. Too often in healthcare, it's the PBMs, it's big pharma, it's big medicine, it's private equity roll-ups of practices, it's insurance companies who are making a bunch of money off of this sick care system, and community healthcare centers like yours aren't getting the funding to keep people healthy. There's something wrong with this picture. And so my commitment is to make sure that the system is working aligned and we are putting money where we most need it, and that consumers are given reasonable choices with transparency, and they're not saddled and preyed on with medical debt. This is not going to be easy. H.R. 1, the big bad bill, needs to be a number one reason why the Congress changes this fall to Democrats who might believe in actually supporting health care. Quickly, for those who need the reminder, the big bag bill takes away Medicaid, is going to make our life a lot harder to do what we need to do. Second, it takes away critical support on the exchanges, making that less affordable. Third, it raises our national debt. And fourth, it gives tax breaks to people who do not need it. So we're on our own in Colorado, left with a difficult situation, and my commitment to you, and my commitment to community health centers like yours, is you are essential. We must be in this work to keep them afloat, to keep communities healthy, and figure out how, with whatever tools we can, to get through this challenging time. Because if community health centers in rural Colorado, I was just with the CEO in Cortez, if they do not make it, those communities, they're not going to have a thriving future. And my commitment to you and my commitment to Western Colorado is to protect these crucial assets, to work together to make sure that we're keeping people healthy and giving them the care they need.
All right, Grace from Rifle, come on up. And since you're still here, this will be for the Attorney General candidates and Attorney General Weiser.
Hello, my name is Grace Colby. I am the farm manager at Highwater Farm, a 3.5-acre diversified veg farm in Silt. First of all, I recently relocated to the Valley for this position, a move that was especially precarious given the lack of affordable housing, which is a challenge I know many organizations face when recruiting qualified applicants from around the country. But I moved here because I want to be a young farmer in Garfield County. There is so much wisdom, expertise, and ingenuity flowing through this valley. But I'm not here to discuss affordable housing. I've come to talk about food access. So Silt has no grocery stores. What it does have is a Dollar General stocked with highly processed food. As grocery prices, and as Connie discussed, the cost of living, electricity, continue to rise, families across our region are being squeezed on every side, making access to fresh, affordable food not just a convenience, but a necessity. Highwater Farm exists in part to fill that gap, connecting our rural community to fresh produce and helping grow the local food economy. One of the main draws of my current position at Highwater Farm was our food access programming. Historically, we have routed about 30% of our harvest to WIC recipients, SNAP recipients through Double Up Food Bucks, local food pantries, and programs such as Valley Meals, which delivers CSA vegetables to homebound elderly residents between Rifle and Carbondale. Thank you. Recent federal budget cuts, however, have eliminated our WIC funding entirely and caused a 50% drop in SNAP recipients enrolling in our CSA program, which is a direct result of reductions in their monthly benefits, which is no small loss, with over 4,300 Garfield County residents currently enrolled in SNAP. So my question is this: as an elected official, What will you do to strengthen the connections between small, local producers like Highwater Farm and vulnerable, underserved populations throughout Western Colorado? Thank you.
Mr. Doherty, would you like to start?
Grace, thank you for that question and for sharing your work. I know you said it's not about housing, but I think your question highlighted the challenges we face on the Western Slope when it comes to not just food access, but also affordable housing and transportation. That question really highlights why the metro region should not be taking and soaking up all the dollars dedicated to road repair and transportation for the state of Colorado. It also highlights why affordable housing is a key issue. But to answer your question directly, first and foremost, as Attorney General, it will be my responsibility to continue Phil Weiser's great work in ensuring that SNAP benefits aren't used by the Trump administration to target people in our community. We should fight to make sure that information is used for what it's intended, to give people the benefits they're entitled to and to lift them up and to help them, not to harm them or seek to deport them. I think it's so important that we continue to build more transportation routes, but also access for people who are struggling to have the food that they need for them and their families. We have too many people who are suffering in our state right now from poverty. And it's because for too long, corporations have been placed first and the people second. And we need to change that dynamic right now. We can't continue to allow for-profit corporations to drive what the state legislature is doing or what our state laws stand for. They should be standing for the people. And as Attorney General, I will always stand and fight for the people when it comes to food access, transportation, and housing. It's why on housing, for example, what I've done as District Attorney of Boulder County in an effort to try to build more trust in the justice system and our democracy, I do a lot of community outreach. And I was going out into the community all the time, and people kept saying to me, what are you going to do about 4-Star Realty? And I started looking into 4-Star Realty, and I teamed up with Attorney General Phil Weiser, and our two offices, for the first time in Colorado history, brought a civil action against a realty company that was ripping people off by unlawfully keeping their security deposits and using hidden and deceptive fees. That conduct was outrageous, and we would not stand for it. It's why Phil Weiser's office and my office got a $1 million settlement for all the victims in that case. It's about making sure we don't bow down and bend the knee to for-profit corporations, but we build more access for people who are in need. And this state, quite frankly, can do better when it comes to that. And right now, the Trump administration is making it even harder for us to do it. So we need strong actors in the governor's office, the attorney general's office, and the legislature to make sure people have more access to food, including the good food you're providing, and making sure that they can afford it as well. And that's something I'm deeply and will always be committed to. Thank you.
And I just want to let folks know we have 2 questions left, including one on housing. So just, no, you're good though. David, please come on up.
Thanks so much. I think this might have to be my last one. I think I do have to run after this. But Grace, I appreciate the question so much and appreciate the opportunity to finish on this one. What you are describing here, I think, captures so perfectly how all of us suffer because of concentrations of wealth and power in this country that we have not seen since the Gilded Age, right? We are seeing the accumulation of power, for example, by meat packers, right, that are harming ranchers, that are hurting working people, that are jacking up prices for all of us at the grocery store. Right? We're seeing increasingly monopolies seize control of our distribution networks, harming small businesses and harming ranchers and farmers. Right? The consolidation of pesticide companies that are jacking up prices for farmers. We need to take that on with a renewed vigor and with a renewed energy. We faced these kinds of challenges before in our country. During the Gilded Age, we saw the meat packers, seize control over our country unlike anything we had seen before, and we saw ranchers and farmers and working people and consumers rise up and take it on, right? To build out a trust-busting campaign unlike anything that this country has ever seen before. That's exactly what we need to do again for our communities, right? To build out sustainable food systems. But here's the thing. We're not going to have the federal government's support in taking on that fight, right? This fight is going to have to be led by communities right here in Colorado, by growers, by ranchers, by consumers, by working people, alongside the Attorney General, right? That's the work that we're gonna have to do. As your next Attorney General, I will be honored to stand on Phil Weiser's very tall shoulders in this space. When you see him up on the stage, you realize how tall he is. And he has been a force across this country in using the antitrust laws boldly, for example, to take on the Kroger-Albertsons merger, to help stop it, work that my organization is doing alongside his office and standing up for grocery workers harmed because of an alleged no poach policy that that those companies had during during a strike a couple of years ago. I think that like what you're describing here is really right at the core of the Attorney General's work. Building out a sustainable food system will mean standing up to the forces of wealth and power that have profited, making billions and billions and billions off of making our food more expensive, less accessible, and crushing our small farmers and small growers and small ranchers. Thank you.
All right, if you are in fact leaving right now, can we ask you a quick question? If you are elected to office, 3 months into your office, will you agree to meet with Western Colorado Alliance and discuss these issues?
I'd be very, very eager to.
Okay, thank you.
Happily.
Just make sure we
If you'll
got that
have
from
me.
you before you left.
Thank you.
All right, Attorney General Weiser.
This is also my last one, and I will answer that question first. I love the Western Colorado Alliance. Can you give it up for them one more time? And Grace, your question, like Dan's, like Leslie's, like Kay's, like Aiden's, it gives me hope. Because we are problem solvers in Colorado. We are facing a challenging moment, a moment that calls on us to come together, to fight for what's right, and build the future that our kids deserve. Let me talk about what fighting for what's right looks like, because you talked about the SNAP program and the cuts that are happening. This Agriculture Secretary, Brooke Rollins, has tried in Colorado to cut 600,000 Coloradans' access to food. I took her to court and won both times. I am sorry to say that Senator Bennett voted for that Agriculture Secretary and says he stands by that vote. And if he were today, we could ask him why he does. I can't explain that. But what I can explain is that your question shows the pathway to a better future. How do we build just, fair, and affordable communities from the ground up? And that's got to start with food. How do we make sure our kids are getting healthy food in school and building a healthy relationship with food? How do we help them prepare the food with mentors, teachers? How do we make sure they bring their ethnic backgrounds and their ethnic foods into school for a better sense of belonging? How do we make sure we're growing local food in Colorado that we're getting into our local schools and into our local communities? I'm still developing my thinking on how we build the best food system we can have in Colorado, and it's been on my mind ever since I did those 19 town halls where I heard a lot from people, from farmers, consumers, and workers about how our food system is not working for them. And my goal as governors to think from the ground up, from the community up, how do we make sure that we are building a food system, that farmers are getting their products to people locally who can build value-added products, who can build companies, who can make sure they're building healthy communities. There's going to be a lot of pieces to this, and I'm sorry I'm not getting a chance to talk about water, but we'll talk about it back when I'm governor, because that's a piece of this too. We can't let the other states in the Colorado River Compact take our water, and we're not shipping it over to the Front Range either. And so my closing thought is this. Look at the leaders you've heard from here today. You've got my commitment as a partner, and you don't have to think about that as a question mark, because you can ask Dan Hotson-Pillar what type of partnership I've had. You can ask Dan Rubenstein what type of partnership I've had. You can ask those who worked on the opioid crisis what type of partnership I had. I will be a partner for Western Colorado on all the challenges that we've been talking about. Let's get to work. Thank you all very much.
Thank you all. We're going to end here because we know we're over time. I just want to say we had two people who didn't get a chance to ask questions. And that was Zizi Mosqueda. Thank you so much for coming up. And Deb Grizel from Rifle. Thank you both for coming. And we just want to end really quickly with you all. Amanda, if you're elected to your office, within 3 months of taking your position, will you agree to meet with Western Colorado Alliance to discuss these issues?
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thank you. Senator Danielson, if you are elected to your office within 3 months of taking the seat, will you agree to meet with Western Colorado Alliance to talk about these issues?
I will be here frequently, folks, and you will be in my audience.
Mr. Doherty, same to you.
Yes, and I'll do it within 3 weeks. Let's go. We have to get to work.
All right. Thank you all so much for taking time today. Thank you, and I'm sorry we lasted longer than we wanted to. Big issues aren't easy to dissect. So with that, I just want to announce a couple quick things. We are having a town hall with Senator Bennett next Saturday, April 18th at the Dual Immersion Academy from 2 to 4 p.m. Same time, we'll see you there. Candidates, if you need to step off, please feel free to do so. But we also talked a lot about funding issues. And while we are so excited to have such respectable candidates running for office, thank you all for being here, I want to remind us all that we, people, can take action every day to address these issues. And if you would like to do that with Western Colorado Alliance, please become a member. We have ways to do that right out in the lobby. And we would also just like to announce today that we are going to work with the Protect Our Colorado's Future Coalition to place a graduated income tax on the ballot in November. If you want a fair tax system that pays for health care and education and child care, that is investing in folks like Jaden and the West Slope Youth Voice, we are going to be here petitioning to get that on the ballot so we can vote on it in November. Please sign your name to the petitions out front, and if you want to do more, sign up to hold a petition and take it to your communities. And with that, we'll just say thank you, and we are Western Colorado Alliance. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks for coming, everybody.